Welcome back to the podcast. Today we got Jerry Quinn, my good friend and realtor from At Properties. Today we're going to talk about, is it the right time to buy property? Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Yes, it's the right time to buy property. You got to get off your ass and just do it. 6% interest rates, they're going to stay as they are for the foreseeable future. The Fed didn't make any move yesterday. Inventory is low. Advice I would give you is that if you're going to go looking for property, please be pre-approved.
That's right.
Be pre-approved. Do not dare submit an offer without being pre-approved, because there will be multiple offers on the table. So you need to put your best foot forward, be pre-approved, have your agent write a good, clean contract. And that's where you're going to get your property.
Jerry, I think people are looking for an easier way. I've done a lot of real estate deals throughout my past, and I find it's funny where people are going in and they're buying a house that really wouldn't appraise out. Their ego gets involved. I want that house. I need that house. I want that one. And then they overpay for it, and then they get stuck for some reason. Their family's hurting. They need to get out of a deal. But when they bought it, their ego bought it. It wasn't a great deal. It was an ego buy rather than a great deal. And I think let's talk about that. When we say go buy property, now's the time to buy it. It's never time to go buy a bad deal.
No. And if your agent, when they submit your offer, or when your agent does submit an offer, they will do their homework, and a good agent will say, yes, I know you really need a property. You need a place with a good school district for the upcoming year. But a good agent will not let you overpay, because it doesn't, the market numbers, the numbers speak for themselves. Good agent won't let you overpay for the property. If you do really want to do it, then, it's your fault. But a good agent will not let you overpay for the property, because they know the value of property. Well,
it goes back to, if you're going to get a deal, you're going to have to do some work, right? Those of you that want to sit on your couch and go make your agent do all the work and go, well, I got this deal, and later on be mad at him or her, to get a great deal, and every great deal I've ever bought took hours and hours. I remember the first house I bought. The very, very first one I bought, Jerry, was a house that was completely dilapidated. It was literally a well, actually, hold on. First house I didn't get, someone else got on me. The very first house was, I was driving. I drove for hours and days. But remember back when we used to get those tapes, how to buy real estate for free?
Yes.
Remember those?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that series, right? I was a kid. I was probably 20 or 18 years old, 19 years old. And I got one of those series. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go buy property for free. And I drove for hours. Just up and down neighborhoods. And I would tell you, go find the worst house on a great neighborhood.
That's the deal,
right? Go find it. Go find a great neighborhood, right? Best neighborhoods out there, and find the worst one. And I found the house. I pulled up in this house, great neighborhood, right? It was a middle class neighborhood in Boca Raton, Florida. And I go down there, and it wasn't even for sale. It was like a jungle. Like the house was inside of a jungle.
Yes. Overgrown front garden. I know the feeling. Yes. Yeah.
So I walked up to the lady's front door. I walked up to the front door, knocked on the door, and a lady answered, and we just started talking. I said, hey, I'm looking for a house in a neighborhood. I noticed you don't have for sale. Do you know anybody in the neighborhood that has a house for sale? Now, you got to imagine, I had practiced this. It took for an 18-year-old kid to just walk up to a door. Now, at the time, I'd worked for a stockbroking company, right? I learned how to cold call, so I wasn't afraid, right? So for those of you who are afraid to walk up to the door, well, there's nothing up there. There's no sign up there. If you walk up and talk to someone, they go, get the F out of here. You're afraid that they're going to take away your birthday or something. It might be harder for you guys, but be brave, right? Like walk up to the door. And so I walk up to this lady, and she's in her pajamas.
Yes, I know. I can picture the scene.
So she opens the door, and what's funny was I could see into the living room where I was at. And we're talking for 20 or 30 minutes, and I noticed there were buckets, like Home Depot buckets, all in the living room. And she had a leak in her living room. It was leaking right there, and she had buckets picking up the water. And it was terrible. And we kept talking and kept talking. And she goes, yeah, I'm looking to sell, right? I am looking to sell, and I just don't know how to do it. I go, well, that's great. At the time, my mother was going to help me buy my first property, right? Because I was 18. I had no credit, but I had money. I'd saved money for a down payment. So she was in Italy and she was coming back, and I made a mistake. Here's the flaw I made. I went and told one of my best friends at the time about this deal. And you know what he did?
He bought it instead of you.
He went and bought it instead of me.
What are friends for?
What are friends for, Jerry? Come on, what are friends for? Come on. You ever have that happen?
Not quite as bad as that, but I've had some stuff happen, some friends, so-called friends, yeah.
Oh, so it taught me, if you're going to do real estate, keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut. Keep your cards close to your chest.
Yeah.
You know, you hit on the point too. You know, if you never ask, the answer is always no.
That's right.
You got to keep your ego out of it. You know, who cares what other people think? And if you're in real estate, you're going to have crocodile skin. I cold call myself, and like, some people are very nice, some people are not nice. But if you don't ask, the answer is always no. You got to get out there. If you're going to be in sales, you got to be aggressive. If you're going to sell someone's home, they need to see that you're going to go the extra yard, even though they may say, hey, this guy's a bit of a pain in the ass. But if he's a pain in the ass to me, he'll be a pain in the ass for me. They need someone who's got some balls to go out there and sell their home. And the worst thing, as I say, someone told me once, you never ask, the answer is always no. It was a great lesson too.
Yeah. You know, so when we were talking about doing real estate deals now, right, you got to go out and find them. You know, our interest rate's got to come down. This is the right time to buy. And I've always said to people, like, right now, there is no inventory out there, right? So you're going to have to go find good deals, right? The deals that show up are going to be overpriced.
Yes.
Right? The marketplace has got tough, and people are all competing for them, right? So you're going to have to do a little creative buying.
You got to do a bit of creative buying. You got to cold call. I do about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day cold calling. I do it 4 or 5 days a week. I do it religiously, but I also go door knocking. I have a listing in Forest Park. I go door knocking there because once it goes on the MLS, the whole world sees it, and now they're all after it. But you got to find your own stuff and say, hey, you know, you got to find your own stuff. You got to go knocking on doors. You got to find sellers. They're not going to come to you. Nobody's going to knock on your door and say, Tony, Anthony, Jerry, I've got this development for Anthony. I've got this single family home for Jerry. It doesn't happen like that. You got to go out and knock on doors. You got to shake hands, give your business card out, let people know you're a developer like you or an agent like me.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not, you get paid in real estate, not for being lazy, right? The money makers in real estate are all deal makers, right? By the way, the people who make money in life are deal makers.
Are deal makers,
right?
Are hustlers.
Yeah, you look, if you're waiting for someone to give it to you, all right, the best you might get is an hourly paycheck, right? Someone will give you an hourly paycheck. You do this for me, I'll give you an hour for that, and you'll get that. If you want more than an hourly paycheck, you have to do more and create more for that person you're working for. If you want to make big bucks and you're working for somebody, you got to find a way to help them make big bucks.
Yeah.
If they make big bucks, you make big bucks, right? I mean, you make it so hard for them not to do a deal with you because you're making big bucks with them. They don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with a real estate deal. If you want to make big bucks in a real estate deal, you've got to go create that.
Yeah. And, you know, I was reading something about Jeff Bezos the other day, and when he started off Amazon, he said, you got to have the customer thinking that when the deal is done, that you give them the very, very best. You give them the very, very best service, that when they think of you, they think of exceptional service.
That's right.
And that's what it takes. I read something about Elon Musk when he started off. Whatever you think about him or his political views, that's what we're not talking about. But when he started off, he had a rented room. Him and his brother, one would code at night, the other one would code during the day. Yeah. They showered at the YMCA. Yeah. That's what it takes.
Yeah, come on. You remember when Amazon first came out? The thought of me paying for someone to deliver, soap to my house or I'm like, no way, I'm never going to do it. Today, should I never go back to the store for stuff? I mean,
never.
I get 10 Amazon packages a week, and it's all kinds of stuff. I need super glue. Oh my God, I open my Amazon, hit the app. I need super glue. I see a book I like, boom, I put the app, right? It's so easy to do it. They make it changed the paradigm for doing stuff, right? They made the deal. He put the work into it to make this thing work for us. Now, I think the same thing has to happen for a real estate deal. I'm gonna take it back to there and go back to, all right, what does it take to make if you're going to buy a home? Let's start with a simple home. Yeah, everybody's going to have to buy a home somewhere in their life, right? In order to find a home, right, for especially young people who have no credit, have no money, right? You got to go find some sweat equity. Today, you can buy properties And I'm not going to tell you they're the best neighborhoods. I'm not going to tell you that, right? You're going to start somewhere simple, right? And find a property, and you're going to have to work your ass off on it. My first house I bought where I lived in was down in Homewood, Illinois. And I bought it for $119,000. It was an old Sears and Roebuck catalog house. Remember those?
No, I don't, to be honest.
So Sears used to sell a house, right? You could buy it in their catalog, in a Sears catalog. It was $2,500, and would come to you, on a cable car, right? And you got, for $2,500, you got the parts. If you paid them another $2,500, they'd assemble it for you. And it was this great little house, right? It was down in Homewood, and I paid $119,000 for it, and I put blood, sweat, and tears in it.
Of course, you have to.
And the guy I bought it from was a computer engineer. He lived in one room. The house was dilapidated. The yard, you couldn't see it. You couldn't see the house from the street. All the bushes were overgrown. He just lived in this one little spot, him and his cats. And he would live, had a bedroom, the kitchen, and his basement, which had 10 computers in it. Right? He was just kind of this very quiet guy. He just he was a computer guy.
Yeah.
And I bought that house from him, and it needed work.
Yeah.
Right. It needed a lot of work. Right. So, that's where we earned. My wife and I at the time, we earned it. Right. We literally, scraped all the paint off of the finishes, and we ripped all the plants out of the yard, and it was nights and weekends, and it took a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of brain. It was a lot of muscle.
A lot of sweat equity. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what you're going to need today, unless mommy and daddy's buying you a house. You need to be able to go in there and, take your suit off and go in and paint the rooms and do. And there's nothing you get on YouTube. There's nothing you cannot do. If you're anyway intelligent, you can find whatever you need to do on YouTube. It'll show you how to do it.
Yeah.
From swimming to painting a room to putting whatever you need, you can find out on YouTube. So there's no excuse.
Part of it was every day I would come home, and it was a lot of work. Someone had painted all the wood trim. It had layers and layers and years of caked on paint.
2 or 3 layers of
10 layers of it. Just so you could see. Yeah, when you scrape, you could see the blue. It was blue once, and it was
blue and yellow and green.
All these 50s colors, 70s colors, 80s colors. Right. Every 10 years, someone put a coat of paint in there, and this thing was built like 1930, and it was great. So every night I would come home, and I would take one door jamb off, right? And it was cool because on the back side of the door jambs, they were numbered. Door 1, piece A. Remember, it was a kit, right? So
okay.
Right. So the kit. So I would take the door off. I'd take it off, and I would put stripper on it, right? I'd put the chemical stripper. Back then, we used real chemicals, and we'd strip it, and then I would take the one from the night before that I had stripped, and I would start to sand it, right? And the one from the night before that, I'd put a second coat of varnish on it, right? And the whole idea was that I had a little assembly line in my basement.
Of the doors,
right?
yes.
Just, I'd work 2 or 3 hours a night on it. It smelled the holy hell. It took us a couple of years to get it done, but we ended up making $100,000 on the house.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't get paid. You don't get paid for buying the house and selling it. You get paid for buying the house, fixing it up, and selling it.
Fixing it up and selling it. And, you said something earlier on, when you're buying a property, you buy the worst house in the best neighborhood because it'll always sell instead of buying the best house in a bad neighborhood. A big thing when people are looking at purchasing a property is the school district. It must be the number one thing now is the school district because everybody wants their kids to have a good education.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Having a great education for your kids is awesome, right? And finding the best or the worst house in a great school district.
Exactly.
It's another way to do it, right?
Another way to do it. Yeah.
And then on the backside you have a pretty good chance of selling it.
You will always find a buyer in a good school district, no matter what type of house it is. As long as it's inside the border of a good school district, you're going to find your buyer.
But how many buyers say, I have no skills, right? They like, how many guys that you're buying properties with, they're like too intimidated to do any of the work, right? If you go to their toolbox, there's a phone book in it.
Yeah. And, a lot of people they'll walk into a house and they're looking for the turnkey house, and they walk into a house and they see a wall that needs to be painted or this and that. And first thing they goes, oh no, no, I want something that's turnkey. Well, if you just look beyond the cosmetic stuff, there are great deals there, and people walk out of houses where you say that's a solid property.
Yeah.
$5,000 or $10,000, you
Yeah.
could turn that around. But they don't. Oh no, I don't want to do any work on that. But people, some people just don't want to listen to you. And it is, once they don't want to listen, there's not much you can do. But some houses there's some very solid properties there's great value there if you just look back, look past the cosmetic stuff.
Yeah, look, for those that are going, hey, I'm not looking to make any money on my real estate. Great. Here. I don't understand that logic. It doesn't make sense to me, right? I think that anything that you're going to make an investment in, especially the cost of a house, right? If you want to appreciate and add some value, but there are people out there who want to say, I want nothing to do with that. I'm paying you to do all that for me, and great. And for those people that are in that space, fair enough, right? I'm not trying to convince those people to do it, but for those that are looking to make money in real estate, right? If you're really looking to make real estate a place where you make money, and the people who I see who don't make money don't follow this behavior. You gotta buy great deals, and great deals usually need you to work some things out, right? Because the deals that are easy, anybody will do them. And we'll start talking about development deals here in a second, about how to do a development deal. Everybody wants to be a developer, but nobody wants to do the work. I always say everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
That's the truth, isn't that the truth? Yeah, that is the truth. So why don't we hit on that development? A lot of people just say developer. So they're not like, before I got into real estate years ago, a developer, like, what exactly does a developer do? Does he buy? So why don't you start us off from the ground up?
Sure.
A developer. Tell me exactly what you do when you see a property that's a good deal. Just walk us through the process of it.
So, that's what you really got to work with, right? So the deals come in a million different ways. Like, and when I say a million different ways, there is no perfect prototype. You might look, some people might say, hey, I'll go look at a piece of dirt and I'll be able to start thinking about what could go on that piece of dirt. And I could look at that as an opportunity. Now, you got to remember, so did the guy who owns it, right? The guy or gal who owns it today, they've been doing the same thing. And the reason why it hasn't sold was either there's some issue with it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Every property you find that doesn't have the highest and best use on it, there's some sort of an issue. Either A, where the owner is or what they're trying to achieve, right? Maybe they're land banking it for future, waiting for it to appreciate more, right? Maybe what they need for it or what they own it for. There's some issues. Sometimes people own a piece of property, they're so far into it that they can't. You're going to sell it to somebody. It's just not enough. If I buy from you, I'm already upside down.
Got you.
Right? Does that make sense?
When you said a thing, land banking. Explain that to what when you said people
Sure.
are.
Sure. So there are investors out there that do what's called land banking, right? It's happening all over the place right now. In fact, these big REITs are out there buying up lots and lots of real estate in markets like in Florida. There's a group, Blackwell, that's really buying up with all these little subsidiaries. They're buying up all these properties in these low to middle income neighborhoods, and they're buying them and just renting them out for now, right? Their whole idea is to grab up a whole neighborhood and convert it into a much, much higher value community, right? And so what they do is they buy it and they find a way to hold it. Now, raw land, it's difficult. One of the best things we have in our country that I think is one of the things that people don't realize, the value of property tax. Nobody likes the property tax, right? No, nobody. I don't know anybody goes, well, I got property tax, yay, right? Especially in some cities where it's really expensive. But what they don't realize is what happens because of property tax. Property tax forces a landowner to create highest and best use. Now let's go through what I mean by that, right? I mean, like if here, like in Europe, there are places where there's no property tax. I got family in Sicily, there's no property tax. You can own property for centuries and do nothing with it. In fact, my cousins and family own property that nothing's happened on for 300 years.
My family property in Ireland, and the property taxes are just minimal.
Yeah, pennies.
Compared to what we pay here in Oak Park. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean.
No, right here.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is it doesn't force the landowner to create highest and best use. Now let's go through what I mean by that. right? So imagine, like here, our building is in Oak Park. This building costs, there's two buildings side by side that we own. One of them $67,000 a year in taxes, right? I mean, it's a lot of taxes. And the one next door is $37,000 a year in taxes. So between the two buildings, it's $104,000 a year in taxes.
That is astronomical.
Astronomical, right?
That's like Manhattan in New York.
Manhattan in Oak Park, right? Now, it forces us to have highest and best use. Now, essentially, 100% of the rent that's on that property next door goes to paying taxes. Right now, if I don't do something with that and keep that value of that property continuously upgrading, right, somewhere I'll lose a tenant. If I lose that tenant, who's going to have to pay that taxes? I will, right? So it forces the land for the community. It keeps the property owners on their toes to continue to develop, which long term is one of the reasons why our country's grown so fast. Right? If you go look at why the United States in the last 250 years has grown, way outgrown Europe. Why, I mean, it's different. I mean, it's not as beautiful as parts of Europe, but we've grown economically. It's mostly because there's a tax associated with you're forced to highest and best use for each property. Does that make sense a little bit?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it kind of forces you into, you can't just, lollygag around and do nothing with this property.
You can't actually sit in your ass with these taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. If this property had no taxes on it and I let it abandoned for 20 years, what would that do to the neighborhood? Mm-hmm. Right? It forces that owner to create highest and best use, which then forces the owner to bring in better tenants, which will then upgrade the property. And that's what's happening. Same thing with all the real estate property for all the houses. Right? I mean, either A, you can't just leave a property abandoned because all that money is coming out of your pocket. Unless you can see a long-term vision where holding on to it for a while, it's so cheap to hold on to it that the long-term, paying those taxes, you'll make back in multiples. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to see that in most properties, though.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be really, one of the problems with being a developer is you got to really take in consideration the holding cost of your property. Right. So we're going to get into how to do a development deal here in a minute. But a big portion of that is your holding cost. Right. So if you go take down a property, in other words, you go buy a property and you're going to develop into a shopping center, between the time you buy it and the time you sell it, right, there's a cost associated with holding it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And there's also, we'll start getting into that. So you start looking at a property, and that's why I say every property comes with 1,000 different characteristics. Right. I've bought properties where, a building was underutilized. Right. I'm working on a deal right now where the owner got so old and they stopped paying attention to the property and they got in their arrears on their taxes. Right. But what they own on the mortgage and what they owe in taxes is more than the property's worth. Does that make sense?
I know it makes sense to me, but yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So now to buy that property, I've got to do a couple of things. Either A, they're going to take a haircut and lose money on the property. Right. Or B, I got to go negotiate with either the city that owns the taxes or the bank that owns the mortgage, or both. Right. And that's what you get paid for in getting that deal done. Right. You could go, well, you could blow it off. And it's hard to go figure out. It's not easy, right, to get a hold of a bank and negotiate with the bank, right?
So I have a question for you now, just for the lay person who's watching this and for myself.
Yeah.
When you do go to the bank and you go to the city, how will they negotiate with you? Because the numbers are in black and white. They say, well, now, Anthony, come on. The guy owes X amount of dollars, and will they negotiate with you? And are they good at it? Or is there...
So here's what you really got to start to look at for them. Right. Like for this property, this is a home. It's a residential home, and the people are living in it, and they're not paying any of their mortgage. They're behind on their mortgage by 10 months. What's the next thing that's going to happen to them?
Eviction notice.
Foreclosure.
Yeah. Right.
Now, the bank's already 10 months behind on mortgage payments. Now they're going to have to go through an eviction. Right. And they're going to have to foreclose on them. A minimum expectation on that $70,000 worth of exposure for the bank. Right. And then during that time that people are living in it, they'll continue to cause damage and
Exactly.
continue to cause a problem. So the bank, their best interest is a way to get out of that as quickly as possible. Now, that's what you got to sit down with them and go, all right, look, these people want to make some sort of money off of it. They won't, right? The best they can do is get out of it with no debt. But right now, they're living for free, right?
Yeah.
Now, the same with the city. You got to go back to the city and go, hey, look, this property is going to go foreclosure. I'd like to go do it, and I'm going to pick the property up and sit down with the property. Now, they're a little harder with cities because not all cities have the ability to negotiate, right? But there are ways to do it. Some cities have.
So what you're saying is some cities are more willing to negotiate than others.
Yep.
And do you know the cities in advance where, nah, if I got to buy this property, I walk into these guys, they're not going to work with me. Is there some cities that you just go, nah, this is not going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. You start to know the cities, the areas that do it. There's some cities that have economic development that want to get rid of these underperforming assets in their community. They know that if a guy like me walks in, I've done other deals in their city. When on the back side of that, I'm going to invest a couple $100,000 in that property, and I'm going to sell that to somebody who's going to become a great tax-paying citizen.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Now, they don't have that motivation. Right now, they got a person that's in there that isn't doing that, right? And it's a play on the neighborhood. If you go look at that neighborhood I'm talking about, right, it's got 3 houses that are all brand new, redone, right, on one side. Then they got this ugly house in the middle, and then you got a couple more houses on the other side that are getting redone, right? So it's the eyesore in the neighborhood. Remember, it's the worst deal on the block.
So a question I have for you: how did you find that house in the first place?
Well, you got to have you got your little people out there, right? So
yeah,
that one came to me through a great friend of mine who's in the business, and said, "Hey, I got this. I just kind of know this deal's happening. It's a relationship, right? I've been working.
It's all about relationships. Yeah,
right. She sold a couple houses for me in the past, and just there's an opportunity for us to go and take that down, take it down, and then we might partner on that, right? So her and I might partner on the deal, and sometimes that's another. Maybe I don't get 100% of it, but together we will go partner on this deal, and you kind of learn something. If you don't have to be greedy.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
hit it on a great point there about being greedy. You can't take. You got to give. You got to give people you're working with. You got to. If someone finds your property, you got to give them a good referral fee because about building relationship. It's not the money you make on the first deal, or it's not selling a property to a certain guy. It's the 10 people he knows.
That's right.
You're not selling the first deal. You're not you make a little bit, but you give this guy exceptional, sir, above and beyond. How about the 10 people he knows and the 10 people they know?
Yeah.
It's all about, that's what
So there's also other deals. So one of the other ways I look at deals are like I'll drive around and look for a commercial building that's underperforming. And you know what I mean by underperforming? Maybe it's abandoned. Maybe there's no tenant in it. Maybe there hasn't been a tenant there for years, right? Maybe there's some issues with it. And you got to start to unwind. Why is that so? Right. And sometimes it's hard to get to those people because it could be a family member that's deceased. It could be locked up in some sort of court case. But this is what you get paid for. You got to go dig it out. Right.
Yeah.
You got to go figure out who's the owner, how to get a hold of them. Right. What's the, how am I going to do that? And you start, unwinding that and you'll get to the bottom of it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you start asking questions. Right. Why is it abandoned? What's the holdup? What are you trying to do here? Well, my dad died, and my brother and I are fighting over it, and we don't, we want to make some money on it, but we don't know what to do, and whatever the deal is. I found one over here with a guy who just was an elderly man. He just was tired, right? He had one tenant in there paying a portion of it, right? But he had the rest of the building was abandoned, right, and dilapidated, and zoned wrong. Right, it was they had a tenant in it, but COVID came in, and the tenant moved out. It was an old theater, right? And the theater because of COVID ran out of business because you just couldn't operate. They were They weren't performing, and the problem they had with the building was they had cut a big giant hole in the floor to put the theater seats in. Right, so to have another tenant come in there, they had to fill the floor in. The air conditioners were all bad. So he just was an old guy, and he just didn't have he was just tired.
Didn't want to do it. Yeah.
So I spent some time talking to him, right? We just spent time talking, right? We had 4 or 5 meetings, and we just spent some time talking and start to understand what's going on with him. hey, look, I don't have the money, or do I have the time, or do I have the energy to do any of that? I go, great, let's cut a deal together, right? I'd like to see if you'd like to own or finance it for me. Here's what I'll do, right? The building needs about $150,000 worth of work in it. Instead of me putting all this money down to buy your building and then I'd be broke, right? When I cut a deal with you, say, look, you finance it and I'll put the money into it. And that's what we did. So I bought the building, owner financed, and I put 150, and I did a little at a time. I put 40 grand into a roof, and then I had to go build, fill in that floor. And a lot of that was sweat equity.
Of course.
Right. Just find how many hours and hours and hours I spent finding people to bring, the dirt to fill it in, and then figure out how to do it. I took the prices from, just, there was a lot of work involved in that to get a deal for that. Right. And then we got it cleaned up, and then we went out and found some tenants, and, and then we had to do a build out for the tenants. And now it produces it cash flows with me making his mortgage payment, a couple $1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm cash flowing a couple $1,000 on it. Figure you get, with tax tag and title, you're still clearing $2,000 a month. That's a pretty good deal to be in.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. And so all of them come in different styles, right? What to really know is, remember, do you guys ever listen to Jordan Peterson?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I watch his podcast. Yeah. All the time. He's a Canadian, not psychiatrist, a therapist, kind of. Very, very smart guy. He's very opinionated, but I really like what he says. And sometimes he rubs people the wrong way because he's very blunt and black and white guy. And that's, that's why I think he's so popular, because he just gets to the core of what he's trying to say,
He sees it. He sees things.
He sees them as they are. And he says, like, if, an example is, I watched him the other day, and he says, if you call someone and they haven't called you back, they actually have called you back. The fact that they haven't called you back, there's your answer. And it's the truth. He says that their phone didn't run out of battery or they were busy. No. And it's the very same as, like, when I have a client and I can tell when they're on the verge of not doing this, your gut will always say, hey, these guys are really serious. They would have called me back. And, so.
No. So one of the things he said the other day that had me really going is, to be a master, you've got to be willing to step into being a fool, right? You got to be willing to step into being a fool first, right?
To be curious, to ask questions.
Yeah, right. So you look, to be a developer, or you want to get into real estate deals, for those people go, I want to be a real estate deal, because they see the outcome. Hey, long-term wealth, long-term stability.
Yeah, they watch these $1 million listings on TV, and they have no idea of the pride swallowing, shit eating occupation this can be for you and for me.
That's right.
And they don't see that, where the rejection, the lack of communication, the amount of, like, you talk about I remember when I started off this real estate, one of the first big deals I got in LA, I'm out there on the Sunday afternoon in my suit, washing dog shit off the sidewalk, off the side of the house, because who's going to, and that's what you have to do.
That's right.
These houses are not just pretty and pink as you walk into them. You got to go in there and you got to sweep floors. And I remember I had to strip a floor once because the cat was peeing all over the place, and it was so bad. Doing the open house in California with the heat, and it was so bad in the summer, I sat outside the front door because I didn't want to sit in, but I did sell it.
Yeah.
And so there's a buyer for every property. You just got to find a way to get them in and buy the property.
Every day, every day there are deals to be made, right? When I get stuck in, my mind is, I get this guy in my head, I call him Fred, right? And Fred's kind of a jackass.
You all have a Fred. Mine's on my left shoulder telling me, you're okay today.
Yeah,
don't work too hard.
Yeah, right. That's okay.
Let's do it tomorrow. Tomorrow, Jerry, just relax it. But you know what? There is no tomorrow.
And maybe that Fred in my head kept me alive for a long time. Maybe in past lives or whatever, that Fred in our the human condition said, don't go over to that new bush because there could be a snake in it. And maybe that at some point it was good for us to have that kind of voice that said, new things are dangerous, right? Because it probably was, right? I mean, think about it. You go to a new place and you don't know what snakes or dinosaurs or what kind of animals are there. But today we have so much abundance that most of us want to check out with scarcity. I mean, look, most if you look at most of us human beings, in fact, I've done it myself. We get off on all the drama, right? Instead of looking at what's possible, right? Today, I literally, when I go shopping at Costco, I have to buy 12 muffins the size of my head, right? They only let you buy 6 or 1. You have to buy 12. I mean, if I would have told that to my grandmother, she'd kick me in the nuts. She'd look at me and go, Anthony, are you crazy? Who needs 12 head-size muffins, right? But today, we have this abundance that's there. But most of us don't do that. What do we look at? We get stuck on Fox or CNN, and we go back and forth between the two of us, see who can scare us the most. Oh my God, he said this, and I said that, and none of it's true, or all of it's
No,
made up somewhere.
no, and this is the greatest country in the world. I grew up in Ireland, and people say, well, why did you come to America? I came to America just like all the other guys, but I got legal here, and now I'm a citizen the right way. But this is the greatest country in the world. You have no idea what scarcity is. My sister graduated university in Ireland, one of the top universities. Before she could get a job as a nurse, she had to work in the swimming pool as a receptionist, just collecting money,
That's right.
which you don't need an education for, but that's what it was like. I know you come to America, there is so much opportunity here.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for someone not having a job in this country. I could get a job tonight in McDonald's. It may not be the job I want, but so don't tell me you can't find a job.
The one I challenge people with is and say, look, that which would checks us out, right? When I get in that place of scarcity, or when I get in that place of fear, people ask me, Anthony, how do you do? You go 100 miles an hour all day long, and it's because the more of that fear you can let go of, that more of that space you can get rid of, the place where you can be on the planet, on the dance floor, dancing it out. There's just a ton of dances to have, right? There's always a deal to be made, right? If I'm not working on something, there's always something to be working on to move something forward. And the way I look at it is life's kind of like this big, call it a big war game, right? So sometimes I'm pushing this troops over, sometimes I put this little troop over, but I'm always trying to move forward. Maybe I get to a place where this deal gets stuck. Great, let's pivot and go work on this deal, right? And it happens all the time, especially in real estate. If you want a great real estate deal, you got to be looking at 5 or 6 deals at a time.
At a time. Couldn't have said a truer word, because if you're focused on the one thing and it goes south, then you're kind of lost. But you got to have about 4 or 5 things going on at the same time. So you're kind of pushing forward when this one stops. And it does happen. People change their mind. But you got to have another one pushing forward. You always got to be working on at least 4 or 5 things at the same time.
Always. We go look for deals for the brands we work for. And the ones that are classic are the franchisees. You got someone, Bob and Betty, franchisee, and they want to go open up a new, ABC sandwich shop, right? And they get all excited. I'm going to go buy this, do this shop. And I go, look, we got to be looking at 4 or 5 deals. Now, let's focus that energy, right? But I got my friend Bob. He sold me a house, and Bob's going to help me find my real estate deal for my ABC sandwich shop. I'm like, look, I appreciate that. But let's make sure that Bob understands what we want to do, because you're the dog wagging the tail, but you've never done a commercial deal before, right? Let's be careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before we go look at a deal, let's go look at a couple of characteristics. One, let's go figure out, where do you want your sandwich shop? Look, where do you live? Where do you travel the most?
Exactly.
This is your first deal. You want to be able to get to it all day, every day. You want to walk in. You're like, look, you don't be one of those first-time franchisees that's not there, and you wonder why the sandwich shop's not working. You got to be there all day, right? So if it's your first deal, you got to learn your business. Maybe when you get to 10 deals or 20 deals, you can get a management team that can do it for you. But your first deal, get it in your path of travel around. You
got to be hands-on.
Hands-on. Learn the business. Know why the sandwiches work. Know how much bread you need. Don't let somebody else tell you how to run your shop. Learn from the franchisor why you're buying a franchise, because you want to learn from them how to run your business and learn your business, right? So we'll start with where we want to put it. Now we want to start looking at what's the characteristics of a real estate deal. Now look, every broker out there will tell you this is, they'll take you out. They want to do what? What do brokers do? They want the what?
They want to sell. They want to get paid.
They want to get commission.
Yes.
Right. So they don't care about your law. They don't care. I'm not saying they're heartless, but their goal is to get a real estate commission. Right. Your goal is to find the perfect property that's going to make you profitable. Right. You want to find a place where you as an owner are going to be profitable. Now we want to start looking at what I call your landlord. What kind of space do you want delivered? Now, if you're renting a house, you wouldn't rent a house without air conditioning, would you?
I wouldn't.
No. Would you rent a house without electric?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you rent a house without floors?
Not at all.
But today's developers do what's called a cold, dark shell. They get a property half built and they go, here, we'll rent it out to, they run out of money, or they don't put all the money into finishing up what we call the white box. A white box would have a bathroom, the hot water heater, it'd have your air conditioning running, a ceiling in, lights burning, right? You'd walk in and it's a finished property. Today's developers, they've learned to be able to go and they half cook it, right? They may even stop the slab about halfway. They figure you're going to rip it up anyways and put your bathrooms in. You're going to put your kitchen in. So
Got you.
they may put no ceilings in. There's no exit signs, right? So what we want to do before we go look at property is we want to create what's called a landlord work letter, right? And this starts the real estate deal for a great franchise. Great franchisors will guide their franchisees to create this. In other words, what we're saying is if I got everything on my work letter, I should be able to build what's an ABC sandwich shop for about the same price always, right? If I got all these things, imagine what's in the sandwich shop is always the same, right? The coolers, the freezers, the tables, roughly the only difference maybe plus or minus some square footage cost, right? Maybe this one's 5,000 feet, this one's 5,002 feet, right? There's a couple of small variables.
Yeah.
But most of the equipment and parts and pieces are always the same that's in the shop. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What's the difference is the attachments, the box that I'm giving. This one has no air conditioning. This one has no bathrooms. This one has no hot water heater. This one has no grease trap, right? If I have to go put those in, that costs the franchisee, but let's say it's, $500,000 to build the sandwich shop. Now I got to start adding all of those items on there. Why is this one 500,000 and this one 700,000? Well, because the difference is I got to do all these things. But landlords will come and go, hey, but I gave you $25 a square foot to do your build out. And the franchisee is like, oh my God, look, I got $25 a square foot. And they look at that and go, oh my God. And the broker's like, look what you got. They gave you free money. And you look at it and go, as a construction guy, looking and go, let's kind of take a look at this. You got no floor. You got no bathrooms. Here, had they finished it out, it would have costed them $50 a square foot, right? Now you're paying the developer and you don't even know it. You're paying them $25 a square foot to build out their building, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
And it happens every day. And that small little franchisee who doesn't know his ass from the hole in the ground or her ass, right? And now just paid $25 more per square foot for a property. And what does that do to their profitability long-term, right? So that's the things that you really got to look at as a real estate deal. So we really want to work on the landlord work letter, right? So first, where do I want to be? What do I want to get, right? What are the things I want to get, right? And that now I can start focusing my brokers on places, right? Because every broker is going to do what? They're going to go first. They're going to go to the MLS sheets, right? And I've never been a broker yet who doesn't have my perfect location in their MLS. Look, this is a perfect spot. It may or may not be, right? If it's not, look, if you're a coffee shop, what side of the road do you want to be on? You want to be on the going to work side, right? Because people buy coffee on the way to work, right? If you're a sandwich, if you're a dinner concept, where you want to be on? You want to be on the going home side, right? So people, right? So where you are, right?
Got you. I didn't think of that, to be very honest, but it's a good point.
Well, you start looking at characteristics of what your customers are, right? I mean, where do they go? If you're a lunchtime concept, where are all the office buildings around you?
Gotcha.
Right? Is there a hospital, churches? What are the things that are going to feed you at lunch? Right? So that demographic model is something that Bob, your buddy who sold you the house, may not understand to do on a commercial deal for a franchisee. Right? They may not understand that mentality of, hey, if I'm going to sell this to make them successful, right? I've got guys who do these Jersey Mikes here, and he works with some great brokers, and the brokers understand his business well and where he's looking. They do all the demographic modeling for him,
The
right?
brokers.
The brokers do. His brokers do that, and it's already baked into the relationship.
Got you.
So they're working on finding him the best place to put a Jersey Mike's, right? To how to put it in that spot. And then they know what the work letter is, right? So before they even start to look at the deal, he's already sent it over to the landlord and got a first run on what the landlord's willing to do, right? And they, before he even takes them the deal, they've done all that homework for the franchisee. Now those guys have done dozens and dozens of deals together, and because they built a relationship, and the brokers looking out for the owner.
Gotcha.
Right. And that's how you build in that's how you sort of work on that deal. So that really starts. And then the next part of it is really about construction cost, right? How do you start to limit, as you look at a property, how do you get them in and out as fast as possible, right? So a lot of deals will negotiate free rent, right? What we don't want to do is be working on a property after the free rent's done. If you're paying rent on a space that you're doing construction on, that's a bad place to be. You're already upside down.
Yes.
Right? You're already costing yourself money before you even opened. Right now you're paying rent on a space that's not there. So you really want to start looking at, how do I structure this thing so that I can be negotiating my deal and be negotiating and be working on my plans and my permits and all this stuff, so that when I go sign the deal, I've got 2 or 3 months to do my construction work with free rent. So when I open, I haven't paid rent yet. Right? And that way you start producing revenue before you get that first payment in there.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, things that we want to do as we start to look at that. And as we look at new franchisees or new franchisors or real estate folks that are looking to help the community, that's the coaching stuff that we do for them, is really help them through that logic.
Yeah. That's good. It gave the ordinary guy a look into what a developer does. It's a little bit more complicated than people realize,
Yeah.
Putting these deals together.
But it's just, remember, you're just going to step into what first? Being a fool, just for a moment.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, being, having it easy or being comfortable or being cozy. That's not where for me, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, that's not where my best self is. The best, I'd be at my best when my back's against the wall and I got to get this deal done. And you automatically go into overdrive or panic mode and you figure it out. Some part of you will figure out how to get it done. But if you're at home, and the worst thing is to be cushy and comfortable, because it's comfortable and it's easy, but for me, I'll never be the best I can be unless I'm pushed.
I fundamentally believe that, look, we get lazy, right? We get fundamentally lazy. I've been there, right? All of a sudden you start doing those practices where you're out there hunting the savannah. Just imagine being a lion, sit around and become a fat cat, right?
That cat, yeah.
And all of a sudden you start getting lazy, and just know that good times never last.
No.
Right? There's going to be bad times, right? Bad times never last. There'll be good times again.
Yeah.
Right? Neither one laughed, but no one ever taught us that. So I don't know about you, but they taught me math. They taught me reading. They taught me health. They taught me social studies, but no one told me, Anthony, it's going to be okay to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, you are. It's not if it's, but you are going to get your ass kicked out there. People are fundamentally good, and I think they're kind, but we are going to meet people who are going to kick our ass, who are going to let us down, who are going to not tell us the truth. And that's just life. You got to be, you got to grow crocodile skin. And, I tell my kids, and I know you've kids and our kids are friends, but I said, guys, you just, you got to be tough inside and give them the good message,
Yeah, it's great, Jerry. I think it's a lot of fun. I think we got to keep going down this path. Every time I have you on the podcast, we keep having some fun conversations. I want to keep doing it. We got to get another one booked here soon.
Great, Anthony. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. If people want to get a hold of you at Properties, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Give me a call on my cell phone, which is 626-484-5512, or my email is jerryrq@properties.com. Or call my Goose Island office. They'll get hold of me.
That's awesome, Jerry. Thanks for being on the show today.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Thanks. Hey, guys, last week we had an amazing week. We broke 65,000 subscribers. We had amazing numbers, but we noticed that a lot of you made it to the end of a podcast and we're not subscribers yet. If you could take a second and like and subscribe right now, it means the world to Alyssa and Joe and the team in the background that finds us these great guests to come on. If you could do that right now, I'd be so grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.